All right, everyone, happy Friday. We are going to examine just one overarching idea today for Roman government, and that's called checks and balances. So we already know that these three branches were designed by the Romans in their republic, in their form of government, in order to balance and ensure that no one person or one branch, one group, has too much power. The same goes for why there's three branches at all. It's so that the patricians didn't have all the power over the plebeians, so that the wealthy upper class didn't have all of that power over the lower class. And so now today we'll talk exactly about something that was written into law in ancient Rome during the Republic, and how they made three branches become equal. And we'll end this lesson with how the United States has adopted the exact same idea. So, why were the Romans limiting power in the first place? We've talked about it here and there, but let's just blatantly state it out loud. The Romans designed a government with three branches in order to limit power to one branch. So we didn't want one branch becoming more powerful than the other branches. That's the basic idea. We know this already. The Romans only allowed consuls and tribunes to hold power for a single year. They designed three branches so not one branch had too much power over the other, and the power of veto was given to one branch to use against the other as well. But it goes even deeper than that. So why were these three simple examples of limitation of power during the Roman Republic done at all? Why was it done? It was done to ensure that a king never ruled in Rome again, and to make sure that no one individual or group became too powerful and took over the government. We've talked a bit about this, but when the city of Rome was founded in 753 BCE, it was ruled for 250 years from that point on by these people that we've talked about quickly, the Etruscans. They were a group of people that already lived in the area of Rome, just like the Latins did before Rome was founded. And so when the Roman Republic was begun, when it started in 509 BCE, it was because there were 7 Etruscan kings that had ruled. They were not great kings, but the 7th of these kings was supposedly really terroristic towards the people. He brutally murdered people in public. He didn't have trials. He wasn't beholden to really any laws except for what he individually wanted to do to the people. And he was apparently really a horrible murderer, someone who did these things that the Romans finally decided this is enough. Enough is enough. We need to start a republic because one individual with so much power is a really bad thing, as they saw through experience. Now, this also gives you an idea of how impressive it was that they allowed someone like Cincinnatus to become a dictator and have ultimate power. Only for 6 months, but you still had to pick a person who would give that power back because we wanted to avoid the idea of having a king again in Rome. So, in order to ensure that there was a limitation of power for individuals and groups in Rome, they wrote into law this thing called checks and balances. Okay? And so these are methods to balance power in government. All right? Now that sounds easy. Sure, they balanced power. How the heck do they do it? These checks and balances keep any one part of a government from becoming stronger or more influential, more powerful, able to determine laws and things than the other groups. It was literally, to create balance, you have to have equal power, and then this idea of checks. These branches were able to check each other's power. They were able to keep each other in check. And that's a big part of why this was adopted by the United States of America when we started our republic. Sometimes this idea of checks and balances made Rome's government pretty complicated, pretty confusing. But when officials worked together, which means when government elected officials worked together within those three branches, Rome's government was really strong and efficient. Efficient means it was able to get things done quickly and fairly. Okay? Sort of the idea of it being a well-oiled machine. When checks and balances within the Republic was respected, which was almost always, not always, but almost always, when it was working the way it was intended, the way checks and balances were designed by the people who established the Roman Republic in 509 BCE, When that happened, and Rome's officials worked together, respecting checks and balances, this is when Rome's government was strong and efficient. Let's look at an example of these checks and balances. We know these three branches, the consuls, the magistrates, and the Senate. The magistrates are actually, within that branch are the consuls. Then we know we have the assemblies and tribunes. We know the magistrates are patricians, the Roman Senate patricians. We know all this information at the top of this graphic organizer. But the limit on power is why I'm showing you this one. The limit on power for this group of these consuls, for these magistrates, is they only serve a one-year term. They had to be a certain age. They had to be 40 years old or older. And each of these consuls, there were two of them at any given time ruling the city of Rome, they could veto one another. So they really held each other accountable as well. Therefore, no single consul can establish themselves as being too powerful, as a king. Okay? The Roman Senate, it could not control the army. It was unacceptable if they controlled the army because they already are the richest men in Rome. They already control the budget, which are the finances. They could issue laws at times. So what this meant was if they have too many powers, too much control, such as over the army, then the Roman Senate could get rid of the other two branches. That didn't happen because of the limit on power, the checks and balances. They could not control the army, and they needed a majority of the 300 senators to make decisions. So that was like that group holds itself accountable with balance and checking on each other because they need a majority within the group. They don't have control over the army. They have control over the finances. Having control over finances means that if the magistrates, the consuls, need money, they need to get it from the senators. If the senators or the consuls want to go to war, well, then they need the assemblies and tribunes. They need the plebeians here because they decide on war. They get to veto these other two branches. However, their limitation on power for the plebeians is that they could not suggest laws. They could veto laws, but they couldn't suggest law, so it kind of takes away some of that power. Each of these three groups balanced one another, and they checked on each other with these limitations. Each branch essentially needed the other branch in order to get things done. They had to work together. They were forced to compromise. That's a big part of this. Now I'll read this here. So, checks and balances in the U.S. today. It is a very prevalent, important part of our republic, of our government. An elaborate system of checks and balances is written into the U.S. Constitution today. This ensures that no branch obtains too much power. For example, all these branches balance each other out. The president has the authority to veto bills of law from Congress. So if one branch, Congress, says, here's a law we like, the president can veto it. But only Congress has the authority to declare war. The president can't do that. So they balance each other to check on each other there. The Supreme Court, the third branch, has the authority to interpret laws passed by Congress. If the president doesn't veto them, then the Supreme Court gets to decide if the law will be passed and if the punishment is reasonable. Therefore, every branch of government in our country has some form of check over the other two branches. One branch can't say, we're going to just go to war, no one can do anything about it. The president can determine we should go to war for up to 60 days, but the president cannot just say, okay, we're at war. He would need another branch, the Congress, the legislative branch, to agree to that. We're going to jump more into our modern form of government as we get into next week. Monday's lesson will be about how the Roman Republic's government really mirrors that of our government. So our big takeaway here today is that checks and balances are a method to balance power in government. And this was because their ultimate goal was to avoid one single group or person taking over and establishing being a king again.